Who's doing the intro?
Kathy, do you need me?
Hi, everyone. I'm okay. Thank you for bearing with us for a couple of minutes as we worked out some technical difficulties. So thanks for being here. I see everybody is logging on. And I'm Kathy Leach on behalf of the Montessori Foundation and the International Montessori Council. I'll be your host today, and I'm joined by our Montessori Foundation panel. Today we have with us Jonathan Wolf, Senior Consultant with the Montessori Foundation, and he will be leading our discussion and presentation today. I'm also joined by Dr. Michael Dorr, Senior Consultant with the Montessori Foundation, well-respected author and lecturer, and also, Michael, I know you're getting ready to launch another You Can Teach It All course coming up, I believe, in August. So
August 4th.
Okay, we're looking forward to that. I'm also joined by Tanya Reiskind. Tanya will be changing her name shortly from Tim Selden to Tanya Reiskind. Tanya is the co-head of school of our lab school in Sarasota, Florida, the Newgate School. So we're very happy to see you all today and to have you join us for this discussion. Where are we now? Assessing, reassessing, and still wondering. So if you're like all of us working with this lab school at the foundation and other schools around the country and even around the world, we are all still wondering what is coming up next and what has been happening. So we're looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to let Jonathan give a few words to get us started. And I want to remind you that on your control panel, about halfway down, you'll see the question box. Please feel free to write your questions and comments in the box. We'll be monitoring those. And again, this is meant to be an interactive conversation and discussion. We really want to hear what you're thinking and doing and what's happening, and we'll facilitate, and you'll hear from each of us today as well. So Jonathan, if you want to get us started and let me know when you'd like for me to screen share, or maybe Tanya could screen share today, since I'm having a little technical difficulties on my end. I want to make sure that I'm not the cause of the freeze on this.
If you want to bring up that PowerPoint, that first page, please, that first slide. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Depending on where you are, to see you all.
Sure. So,
good to see you too, John.
Thanks,
yeah, so we have people from all over the world here today with us, and so we appreciate you tuning in from whatever time of day, as Jonathan said. Jonathan, maybe you and I, what Tanya's getting the PowerPoint up.
I have it up.
Okay.
It says I can't share it.
Okay, well, I
think I have to be presenting.
That. Mm-hmm.
Kathy will give you permission to share.
Okay, we got that.
In Montessori, we share occasionally. On your developmental level.
Okay, did you get the invitation to share?
I did.
Okay, all righty.
Let's see.
Right now we see the GoToWebinar dashboard. It's quite exciting.
Just a little intro. So rather than a formal presentation, as the title suggests, you know, we're all in a state of uncertainty, flux. There's so many different permutations that can occur as we're trying to open our schools back up. So we'd really like this to be sort of a panel discussion where you share with us some things that you're wrestling with currently, and have other capable administrators, school leaders on the line, and our panelists discuss what they are observing, what they are doing in their schools and in their organizations to make all these critical decisions that have so many incredible variables. So how are we doing there, Tanya?
You should see it.
No, we see your GoToWebinar dashboard.
See my GoToWebinar.
Yeah, so we're seeing like you're open. We're not on the right. There we go.
Screen, that would be great.
Is that good?
Yeah, we just have to make it full screen.
Full screen.
You know, I'll tell you what, I had Zoom problems yesterday. We have GoToWebinar. I think all of my technology is just wearing out. It's just saying enough is enough.
How does that work for everyone?
I appreciate everyone bearing with us through this. It looks great.
Yeah. So let me, I know it's kind of small. I don't know whether you can make that any larger, Tanya. That's probably as big as we can get it on GoToMeeting. But I'd like to share who these characters are in this Far Side. There we go, in this Far Side cartoon. So just to be clear for everybody, the cave person who's holding the spear is the head of school. Being bear hugged by a combination, the bear who represents COVID-19, the current economic crisis, and addressing racism in society. So the head of school is actually in a chokehold, given everything she or he needs to deal with. The little boy there, as you can see, of course, is one of our students at our schools, because he has been online for the last 3 months. You can see he's a tad overweight from eating too much junk food at home. His mother is standing next to him, and you see she has her hand raised, the lady in the green dress, and she's saying, because she has been stuck at home with her children for 3 months, is there a chance that I could put my child up for adoption? The cow is your faculty, is our faculty, and you can see the cow's udder is actually filled with milk. It's quite abundant there. The cow has a lot of milk, but because the cow doesn't know where to deliver or how to deliver the milk of learning, given the current conditions, the cow doesn't know what to do with its instructional milk. And finally, the man raising his hand in the back in a doctor's smock is Dr. Fauci, trying to get our parents, American citizens, and the US president to listen to his scientific advice. I just wanted to contextualize all this for you.
Wow.
Okay.
Thanks for that, John.
Bravo, bravo.
Before we get into serious stuff, we better have some humor. So I want to say, before Tanya takes us to the next slide, I'm going to apologize if any of the religious connotation or one of the words in the next slide is offensive. But as I was thinking about what school leaders that I'm hearing about are wrestling with, this cartoon came to mind. So I'd like you, can you bring it up a little bit higher? I'd like you to raise your hand. I think it's got to go higher. Get Tanya to, I'll read what the cartoon says if you can't see it.
Tell me where it is and I'll do it.
Yep.
Down a
You're
little
good.
bit, Tanya. Okay. So the headline reads above, raise your hand if you are currently feeling this as a head of school. And these fish have gotten, as you can see, outside their goldfish bowl. And for those of you who can't read the copy, one of the fish is saying to the other about their bowl that's on fire, well, thank God we all made it out in time. Of course, now we're equally screwed. So the head of schools that I'm talking with, it's like, once we've solved, the health problem, now we've got the enrollment thing to deal with. And now how am I going to, who am I going to bring back on staff, when, where? So it's one of these things that have so many variables. It's really, really difficult. So, all right, let's go to the heart of our discussion, which would be the next slide, Tanya. What critical decisions are you currently wrestling with? You can keep going up a little bit. I want them to see all the bullets, Tanya. Down one, down again. No, too high. Down a little bit. One more down. Can you push it one more down? There we go. All right. So basically, we would like to hear what you are wrestling with regard to educational program options and alternatives for the fall. Anything you want to talk about in terms of, well, is this the best way to deliver that to children in a Montessori-like way? Anything that you would like to address with regard to enrollment management and parent relations? Staff relations, including the morale of teachers, which I'm personally really concerned about given how hard they've been working, your employment decisions regarding your teachers, the scheduling of teachers, the stress of teachers, and giving teachers the time and resources for their pre-year preparations, pre-year prep, anything that you'd like to discuss regarding your faculty. Health mitigation policies and procedures. You'd like to explore that either by asking a question or sharing what your school is doing. We'd love to hear about that. Financial planning, of course, is always front and center to keep our schools stable. And then very, very importantly, we'll call this your or leadership executive functioning. How are you doing with your self-care and your self-organization and prioritizing and your life-work balance? So really, that's it. We just wanted to set the stage for anything you would like to share, discuss, or ask about in any of these categories or any other category that we have not thought of.
That's a lot, Jonathan. So I would like to encourage everyone to think about each of these topics, and we can start our way from the top and work down, or you can just jump in anywhere. But go ahead and put anything into the question box. I'll be monitoring that. John, we had a great question about what about the snake? There was a snake in your cartoon.
Was there really?
That's what he says. There's what about the snake on the ground?
Wow. I'm looking at the cartoon. I don't
Maybe
see
that, well, maybe that was maybe that was just on
Michael
our
Dorr is the storyteller here. Michael, given our current conditions, what is the snake representative of?
I suppose it's our temptation to do the wrong thing periodically and to just go off the rails. And that's always in front of us, the temptation to throw up our hands and run screaming out of the building.
Actually,
perfect, Michael.
Michael, it would be run slithering out of the building.
There you go. There you go. By the way, back to this list you have here. I don't see in here something I think might be important, which is the environment. The classroom prepared environments, because it seems to me there's going to be a tremendous amount of attention to making that safe.
Yep, that's really under the big umbrella of educational program options and alternatives. That would be an absolute subset under, well, what does your environment as part of your educational programming look like? But
a good point, because people are really talking about prepared environments. In fact, I would go so far as to say the prepared environment, given COVID, also the prepared environment given our equity issues that we're all dealing with as schools and institutions, and our online perhaps or remote learning prepared environments. So there's a lot of factors that maybe we hadn't thought of before that are expanded. The question box is filling up, so I'm going to go ahead and start giving you some of this feedback. Let's see. Laura Asher says, how to secure staff when we don't really know if we'll be open? And then I'm going to give a couple, and then we'll kind of decide how we're going to go forward with this. Should I open my new school, or should I just wait? I've been fired up to open my authentic Montessori school. It's needed in my area. And Colleen Carlson asks, she's telling us about the snake. It's under the stool. Perhaps it represents all the unknowns, that which we haven't thought of yet.
Yeah, there is a snake under the stool. Thank you.
Oh, the powers of observation.
Wow. So much for my observation. So on the first question about, staffing decisions, I'd really like to throw that Tanya's way, because I know she and Tim have been wrestling with that at Newgate. Tanya, if that doesn't completely stress you out.
No, I think it's a great question. The one thing I did first, and I think we all should be mindful, take a breath. You're not alone. You're not alone. And so the first person you want to talk to, or if you don't have one, find one. If you don't find one, contact me or Kathy or John, is your human resource personnel. Human resources, because employment law is really going to affect some of these decisions. So you want to be sure, in light of COVID and in light of equity, that you understand what you need to do with the people. The second piece of, and I say this not only for you, but for me, the second piece of advice is look at positions needed, not people. Because if you're looking at people, it's going to become too difficult for you. It's emotional anyway, and we are by nature persons. We are in our business, and we are in our schools, and we are with teachers and children because we care, and we care deeply about people and their well-being. And so when you're making these tough decisions, we have to look at it in buckets and in an organizational structure that puts the whole well-being of your school first. Okay, the whole well-being. Don't look at it program by program, and don't look at just the numbers. Look at the skill set you need to weather the storm. And I'm going to stop there and invite my colleagues to jump in. And John, if you think you want to flesh something out more or a point more, please feel free to invite a question for me.
Well, Tanya, I think one of the things you have done extraordinarily well, you and Tim with the Newgate faculty, is, you've been honest about, well, here's where we're at right now in terms of programming. Here's where we're at right now in terms of enrollment. Here's what we're doing. Give us your ideas. You've brought them in as a collaborative part of the decision making about staffing and programming. And I think that's incredibly important. You don't want to suddenly surprise your teachers with decisions. You want to treat them like professional adults and give them information. It doesn't need to be, how do I say, you don't want to be, on the one hand, too Pollyannish, like, oh, it's all going to work out. It's like, wait a minute, that's a little bit too out there, too positive psychology. Or you also don't want to be doom and gloom. You want to say, here's where we stand, here's what we're doing, if you have some ideas. So I've really appreciated your transparency.
Thank you, John.
And I think you've built the community because you've been so transparent, and you've brought them into the discussions about programming issues and as Michael brought up, and design of environment issues.
What's interesting is in our work talking to so many schools, we all know that we're going to need more staff in terms of especially cleaning and organizing, and we're going to have to pod children and group them in smaller groups and expand where we put different, sibling groups and considerations. And I know that there's a core group of us that have been meeting regularly. And one of the conversations I was able to have with faculty, and I know other heads of school who are on this webinar can chime in as well, is we had to ask this question. In light of what we know and in light of what we need to do, how should we rethink our roles? What more could we be doing with each other and with supporting the roles that we need, the tasks, specifically like cleaning? Some schools have said they need to hire more people to clean. And one of the conversations I had with some of the faculty at Newgate is who's willing to kind of do a different job or reorganize their day to include some of these other tasks that we might need to get done. And so that was a really powerful conversation and a powerful question, is rethinking internally your own skill set and capabilities.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to add, because this question was particularly from Laura about securing staff. So I wonder if we consider things that normally we wouldn't consider, like delaying a contract or a particular formal agreement and asking teachers to, to really wait until we know something, or to looking, as Tanya said, there are other ways to utilize people. Sometimes, and we've heard this from many schools, sometimes it's a gift to furlough them, because then they can collect unemployment for a short period of time until you know more, or you can bring them back. So there are a number of different ways to look at this.
I want to make a couple of related points to this, if I may.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
First of all, there are people who are fearful. And I think we have to acknowledge that we can't deny a person's feelings. And if their fear is there, fear of coming to school. In Minnesota, I live in Minnesota, a recent survey showed that one third of the families, of the parents of school children, don't want to send their children to school in the fall. What's that going to do to faculty and staff? Can we employ 100% of the faculty with 66% of the children? And what about the administrators? Can we keep on a batch of administrators? They may also need to rethink their roles, because all of a sudden that changes the picture across the board. I respect their fear. I get it. But at the same time, it has implications. That survey didn't ask what percentage of teachers feel the same way. Or, and of course, teachers aren't the only personnel in the school. there's all sorts of other people that are in the school that are significant to its operation. My guess is probably about a third of them feel the same way. And in the schools I work with a lot are charter and public schools. And I don't think we're addressing that issue as much because there, for example, here, we're dealing with union mandates too in the Montessori schools that are saying they're going to make a decision that you either need to come back or not. It's not your decision as head of school if you're the principal of a public school.
Right.
Since those now represent such a significant number of Montessori children across the country, they need to be part of our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed. David Aguilera, nice to see you, David, has a comment about making sure that everyone's aware that they have access or they might possibly have access to funds provided to states via CARES. So he's saying, and I believe, I know David's in Florida, but other states may have something as well, that his LEA has worked with us and is providing considerable amount of money for COVID prep, tech, and mitigation. Mm-hmm. Really good thing to know, to check with your LEA and see what's available in your state. Tanya, you've done a lot of research, I know, on what's available for the Newgate School. Any other thoughts on resources that could help schools?
Well, it is interesting because Florida specifically has a private school consortium that keeps us updated as to what's available that has been historically and traditionally made available to public schools and who it's following. So some of you I know as private schools are following Title I monies because you can in your state. It's all state dependent on how your state organizes itself to filter federal money. You're all eligible for federal money across the board, but how your state chooses to get it to you is what you need to become aware of. And the kicker is, how many hurdles do you have to go through to be eligible? And so read the fine print because it might be worth it. And you aren't going to be getting direct dollar allocation because you'll probably have to go through state preferred vendors for whatever it is you need. And so those are things that your state public school district representatives can really help you with. And I haven't been in the state of Florida very long, but they were some of the first people I contacted to get a relationship with because remember, every child, no matter where they are in school, has some level of support from the federal government through either IDEA or ADA or other programs. And so and then there's ramifications on accepting the federal money, and those ramifications have been changed dramatically under COVID. So
yeah, and there's different state and local funds available, and most states have an office of non-public schools, as well as, you know, we don't want to, Michael's called to our awareness yet again, the public and charter group that is, you know, public magnet schools, public schools all over the country, at a minimum of 500 of them. So it's a significant number of students being served that we also have to consider. So if you are with a public or a charter school, please weigh in here and tell us what your issues are as well, so that we can help with that.
I want to piggyback on what Michael said about the unions. I think that we have totally underestimated where they're coming from. I mean, I was reading information from several of the teacher organizations in February and March. They were starting to strategize. So we really can't underestimate what their priorities are going to be and how they're going to weigh in on this state by state and then nationally.
That's
so
really a great point. I think that's really a great point. You came to Florida from Michigan, which is a highly unionized state. So is Minnesota, where I live. And teachers' unions typically are the largest ones in the state. I mean, they're big groups, and they have a lot of clout. And I think that if you're not in a state like that, you don't appreciate the power that they could have that is it's really not necessarily, and this is not meant in a demeaning way, but it's not necessarily always about the educational advantage to the child. It's more about the member of the union and being sure that they have, well, what the union desires them to have in terms of pay or benefits, or in this case, safety. So I think that, and by the way, another thing I wanted to say, besides that, well, we're talking about every child has a right to some federal funds. At the beginning of this discussion, we were informed that there are people from all over the world participating in this discussion.
Yes.
Those people don't have the right to federal funds if they're in Scotland or South Africa or wherever. We have to realize this, Montessori is worldwide.
Yes. Yeah, very true. And there's very different resources in different places. So again, we're anxious to hear from each of you. I want to come back to Geraldine Eldridge's question. Should I open my new school or should I just wait? I've been fired up to open my authentic Montessori school. It's needed in my area. I just worked with one of our consulting clients this morning on this very issue. She has a second campus opening. Should I open it, right? It's a very legitimate question right now. Should we open any schools? This is a legitimate question, let alone a new school. So, John, what are your thoughts on that one? Well,
I mean,
maybe Geraldine can tell us what area of the country she's in, because I think that informs us, or what country she's in. I'm assuming that's the U.S., but I don't know that. So,
yeah,
Geraldine, tell us where you're from.
Yeah, but even apart from that, I mean, this really comes down to what they call data-based decision making or empirical decision making. It's like you have to look at the economic situation of families in your area. You have to look at what the other schools are doing. So really, this is based on, if I was thinking of opening a new school, I'd really want to look at, is this a fertile time given the market in my area? Where are families at financially? A major question would be, how well are other schools serving their students, both public schools and private schools? We're seeing a number of schools around the world, really, that for financial reasons and possibly for philosophic reasons, health reasons, enrolled families are leaving those schools. But what's happening is families who are not being pleased with the services in other schools in their area are coming and applying to Montessori schools. Tanya at the Newgate School, the Montessori Foundation Lab School, has had a host of new admissions inquiries. So I think a determining factor has to be, is there fertile ground? Will there be a supply of students in your area given families and where they're at financially, but also what's going on with other schools would be some determining factors for me to open or not open a school if I was looking at that.
I would also look at it from a really entrepreneurial, business-minded perspective, is that you have a golden opportunity to do a soft opening. If your overhead is low at this point, you could really, target your population in a way that, you have these people, and you could start in a small way of putting in some procedures and, somewhat akin to the restaurant model. Restaurants do soft openings, and they don't maximize their seating because they're trying to, especially 5-star restaurants, have to decide, is their wait staff from the point of food reception to the last seat in the house, can they get the food there fast enough? And they do time studies and all these things. And so I would look at this time as an opportunity to do a soft opening and not go full bore. Maybe you open up, a halftime program and get feedback from the community that you're serving.
Thank you. I want to, Geraldine has weighed in and given us a couple of other things. First of all, Georgia is what we're talking about. So Georgia, USA, thank you for that information also. And I really want to address this part. I'm becoming discouraged. Common sense says don't open now. It's beginning to feel like, why bother? I think I can certainly identify and understand where you're coming from with that right now, Geraldine. And I want to tell you why bother. Because it matters. It matters that we have more Montessori schools serving more children, even if it's not everything you ever envisioned it would be today. Whoever you can serve, whoever you can let know that you're here, can you offer things to parents to have them to start to get to know about Montessori in your community? Are there ways that you can reach out and let them know what we're about, that as Montessorians, we're here to support families and children? The why bother part is everything that we do. It's every reason that we all do the work that we do. And as a Montessorian, you have this dream of opening your school. It sounds like you say it's a good fit for your area and there's no other schools in your area. So it sounds like it's a need. And I would say if you need support, please reach out to us privately. We really are happy to help you think this through and look at how we can work through some steps, because it does matter, and it matters to the children and the families in your community. It just, the timing might not look right, and all of the obstacles can seem overwhelming, but I encourage you to please consider continuing on, even if it doesn't mean the actual opening you were thinking of.
And Kathy, from what we heard from our meeting last night with the doctor, I think that those words for is it Geraldine? Geraldine also resonate, that what you really want to look at in your community is sustained transmission. So if and he was really helpful. So if you can find someone locally in your community that is in the medical arena to help you. So one of the questions I asked him point blank, and I'm in Florida and we're seeing skyrocketing cases, and I have a summer camp going on with children on site with faculty, and I asked him point blank, are we okay? And he walked us through the questions. How are your numbers? What are your methods? And he said, yeah, it sounds like you're good. And that was, I know for me, very reassuring. How about for you, Kathy?
Yeah, I found it to be, to be able to cut through some of the stuff that we hear nationally, the media, whatever. It's really important to talk to your local medical professionals and health department and really try to get a handle on what's happening in your own area. And he certainly made it very clear to us that we need to be looking at, just as the CDC has said all along, you want to look for 2 weeks of declining cases, not increasing cases before you open. Now, I mean open in person. Does not mean you cannot open your school. And many of our questions have to do with the distance learning and hybrids and how do you do that. And Tim, I see that you have joined us. Welcome. And what would you like to add?
Just a quick thing for the question that was asked about discouraged in Georgia. Most new businesses fail because they don't have enough working capital. And it takes about 3 years before most businesses ever begin to make a profit. So in addition to the issue of feeling discouraged and the counter of possibly doing a soft opening, really what you want to do is look at your own sense of energy, your own sense of willingness to wade into the waters at a troubled time when schools are needed most. I couldn't agree more. But you also want to make sure you have enough operating costs. John mentioned if your operating costs are low, you might be able to do it. Just make sure that you really take into account all the costs of getting your licenses and insurance and everything else, and be able to keep the school afloat, even if it's a boutique, because it will take a while. No matter how much the demand is, it takes a while before the word gets out and you build up. So just make sure you have enough working capital. Yeah. And we will help you think it through if you need a hand.
Yeah, thanks. And Colleen Carlson, thanks. She weighed in also, said, she will, either way, she wants to let people know that the school's coming, and, if not immediately now, when will that happen? So we definitely agree with that. A couple more questions here, guys. Let's see. Christina says, in Pennsylvania, USA, we are licensed by Department of Ed, non-public, nonprofit preschool, and have found that we have continually fallen through the cracks for federal, state, and local COVID funding, either because the funds are for K through 12 or not available for nonprofits. If anyone from Pennsylvania knows of a source for licensed early childhood early education schools, can they please contact me? And she has her email here, beavervalleymontessori@gmail.com. I'm saying that because we so strongly believe in people reaching out and helping each other. So if you don't find anybody in Pennsylvania on this particular call, again, email us, Tim Selden at Montessori.org or Kathy Leach at Montessori.org. We'll try to connect you with somebody else in Pennsylvania.
I've had the honor of helping her a couple of times. Please contact your local congressperson's office. They're likely to know of what's available. You might also want to look at your state senator or your state representative for your district. They usually will know.
Yeah. And David Aguilera asks, is that discussion posted somewhere? And I think he's referring to, Tanya, to our discussion with the infectious control doctor last night. And that was a private conversation specific to our area, to Sarasota, Florida. So we don't really have anything to post. And what he shared with us is very relevant to that particular area. Now, I do happen to know that David's in that area or some, in the vicinity. And so, David, if you want to reach out to us privately, we'd be happy to share what the doctor shared with us as well in a little more detail. And you know how to contact us. I know that for sure. Let's see.
One thing we heard that we really ought to make sure everyone hears, because it was news to me. He really recommended against masks and in favor of face shields.
Yeah,
he made a very compelling case for why the hats that have the plastic face shields are in general much better for both child and teacher.
Yeah, that was a very, very interesting point that he made, and it is relevant pretty much to everyone. So several questions, and we've got a little bit of time. We've got about 20 minutes left, so that's good. How are schools handling shared responsibility for providing online and on campus at the same time? This is a familiar question. We hear this a lot. So, how do we do that? Some people think it's one way to keep all of your teachers employed, because some will be delivering the in-person services to those who can safely attend in person, and then online for those who can't. And Tanya, you have a unique way of offering an asynchronous program that may be of, maybe something for people to think about.
Well, we're not, we're with you. What happened to us in March is that we had families who had lived in Florida and had left the state and had gone to other communities. And for one reason or other, their Montessori schools closed. And so they reached back out to us to see if their children could join our online program. So we had some experience, and then we had people from other countries ask if that could happen. So we had 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 11-year-olds joining our online experience. When our faculty started talking about what it would look like when we came back, we definitely know that we can offer online. We did that. But certainly for elementary and early childhood, it is not ideal. It is not where we want to be. And we definitely knew we could do in person, because from August to March, we were in person. And then we had the discussion of equity. So the discussion of how do we deliver an asynchronous online program came out of the discussion of equity, because there are children who will not be able to join our classrooms due to health issues. And if we do not service them, then we aren't, we're in violation of probably ADA and IDEA. And because we should be diverse and accommodating children with learning differences and special needs. So how do you do that when you have 1 or 2 or 3 kids who need that level of service? And how I explained it to the faculty was that Johnny's going to come on my device, and he's going to be he's going to be my buddy. And everywhere I go, because I'm going to attend in class with my teacher, and I'm going to go to a lesson, and I'll look at my friend and go, do you want to go to that lesson? And I'll take the device with me, and it will be in a Zoom format. so that he has the capacity to see the lesson, and he doesn't have to stay all day, but he can attend. We'll have a menu of lessons and an idea of when they'll be given, and the Zoom room will be open all day long, and there will be multiple devices in the room. And then I'm looking into microphones, because that's the part which will get a little bit sketchy. So that is the kind of idea. It's not an either or, it's an and. However, we're under considering if that population grows to more than 5 or 6 kids, then we have an online cohort. And so how do we move to an online cohort that has a dedicated teacher to help them in a different way? And so all of this has to be considered. And if you are not familiar with any of the technologies, your local school district, for me, the universities were where I got most of my technology training. That all the universities, and they don't even have to be close to you, have departments of technology that you can access free information on different things. And certainly Google and Zoom now are offering webinars and workshops for teachers in ways that didn't exist 6 months ago. And so I really encourage you to, I know it's a lot on our plate, a lot to learn, and then delegate. I've actually delegated, so I use Seesaw for our young children and our elementary program. And I have 2 people on our faculty who are becoming Seesaw experts.
So thank you for that, Tanya. I think that, that's just a unique offering that we haven't heard a lot of schools doing. And so that's just a different way of offering, because some schools will do online as a totally separate program. And that we're not saying one instead of the other, as you've outlined. I have a couple of questions I want to regarding Tim's statement about masks versus face shields. So we do not officially make recommendations. We share information regarding any kind of safety protocol. So we are sharing information, but I'm going to make it really clear that Tim did not recommend not wearing masks. He just simply shared the information, and Tim, you can speak for yourself, but I think it's important to know that the infectious disease doctor we spoke to said that there is not sufficient research right now on masks. That does not mean that they are not useful for children and might be higher compliance for children than a mask might be. I think that that's what I heard. So please, Tanya and Tim, go ahead and speak.
Thank you. First off, you're absolutely right. I'm not trying to recommend. I just thought it was such interesting information.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything quite like that from someone with that level of expertise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And his point was the same thing that we're starting to see in funny videos on YouTube. Some kids will wear masks and others will chew them and play with them and take them off and so forth. So
Yeah.
whatever we're doing this year, there'll probably be something a child will do to thwart any effort we have.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate, I think we were all surprised at the level of credence and opportunity for keeping children and adults safe while addressing their social emotional needs to see each other. That was, we were taken aback. And then he did the science of what's the difference between aerosol and droplets. But he said face shields were a viable option.
Yes, and another thing I heard, and again, we're sharing information, we're not making recommendations. I'll give that disclaimer yet again, but what I found interesting also is that his feeling was that it protected the wearer, where cloth masks do not. They protect the spread. They don't protect the wearer. And that's just, somewhat of common sense, because the shield itself is impenetrable. So, those droplets would have to come up and around, and he said they don't have that kind of trajectory. They can't really do that. So I just thought those were interesting points of consideration as you look at making the decision on those. Okay, we have a couple of, Tanya, can you share the Seesaw link?
Yes,
in Google?
Seesaw, yeah, seesaw.me.
Yeah,
And
and a
we
lot
can
of people have been happy with Seesaw. And
There's,
if you're not,
there is a free version.
and I would have to say, I have to put a plug in, go to Montessori.org on the urgent news and announcements page, because there are multiple, and have been already, multiple workshops coming up or webinars coming up that are specifically addressing some of these issues you're asking about with distance learning, or specific platforms, or how to do this with each age level. Sponsored by CGMS. They're all free, and they are listed on our website at Montessori.org. So please check that out, because you're going to get a lot of very, very specific feedback from people who have used these different platforms. Okay, we also have, let's see, I've got a couple other questions here. Sarah Prosser says, we are looking at starting the year with 10 students in each of our 4 early childhood environments. Great for physical distancing, catastrophic for the budget and staffing. Usually we have at least 25 students in each class. Elementary enrollment is better, but the early childhood enrollment is the financial bedrock of our school. Trying to keep qualified teachers on staff to allow for expansion. That really, Sarah, you've summed it up. I mean, that's the reason we're having this conversation today, because I think this is what we hear every single day. We're just, yes, we know how to be safe, and we know how to socially distance, and we know how to meet the needs. We don't know how to pay the bills, given that situation. And so, who in the panel would love to tackle that one? It's a tough one. I think we're all working with it. And we are helping schools individually work through those issues, because each school has a different, what we might call burn rate, how much money you have in the bank today, how long that's going to last given the situation that you have. We're encouraging schools not to discount their tuition significantly, so that you can, stay open. In fact, we know of some schools who have raised their tuition due to the fact that they have higher COVID expenses, and higher expenses because of staffing having to have different ratios. We had somebody who said, who was it yesterday? I don't want to quote them out of context, but they said when parents ask if you're going to give them a tuition adjustment, they said, yes, I'll be raising the tuition significantly to meet the need. So,
Well, and Kathy, I mean, all of us have gone through the recession, and different schools handled it differently then. Don't be afraid to talk to your faculty about who might be willing to take a sabbatical for a while, who might be willing to, leave, who might be willing to take a pay cut. I mean, it just
part-time even.
Go part-time. I mean, go ahead, John.
No, I think you've opened the door to, it's really about creative thinking. And Tanya's brought up, let's talk to our faculty about maybe who does have the financial bandwidth to take a sabbatical. A number of schools are looking at alternative indoor and outdoor spaces for additional classroom space for another cohort here of students, or we can put more students in this space because we've never used this room before. Let's set up an early childhood classroom in our all-purpose room, our multi-purpose room. So it's really about looking at these constrictions that constrict our budget based on these health constrictions and these mitigations. And are there ways of getting around that are, one, mostly physically safe and healthy for both adults and children, but also can bring us more enrollment and allow more of our staff to stay on? It's about creative thinking, whether it's about staffing or use of space or other things, getting out of our old thinking boxes.
Yeah, we have a comment about that, and I think Tim wanted to go next, but then I have a comment to read. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I just wanted to speak to the burn rate issue. What we're talking about right now is probably one of the most difficult situations any of us will ever face as heads of schools, other than, God forbid, a child dies or is terribly injured. this would be a good time to get help. The only way that we get through Newgate right now, for example, is because Tanya and Kathy, separate from me, sit down and go through the books and think things through. You may be in a situation where you really need that in your school because you may get emotionally overwhelmed, or you may just feel, how do I make these decisions? This is why people turn to consultants, and whether you use us at the foundation or you find some other solution, you probably don't want to go it alone.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Tim. I do want to get back to this comment, and we'll talk a little bit more about the small cohort groups and the coaching kinds of things we have to offer, because I think a lot of you could find, it could be an affordable option. Alicia says, though, back to John's point, we are planning to set up outdoor classrooms where the majority of each day will be spent, weather permitting, of course. Does anyone have any experience with that? And I know there are probably people on the call that are on the webinar that might have some experience. I know Tanya, we're talking about doing a lot outdoors as well, and we have the space to do it. And her follow-up question is, and how many students are others putting in elementary classrooms? And I know that has a lot to do with local situations.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, well, we know our friend in California. Is Mary Beth on the line? I'm sure she is, but
I don't see her today, but she
her
usually is.
school, that elementary, they're doing 1 to 12 because they can based on square footage. So it's a little bit more arbitrary, but it's definitely based on your local. One school that we've talked to, they have purchased a heatable a tent.
Yeah.
Because they're not in a warm climate, but they're in a climate that is temperate, and it's they can put a portable heater into the tent. It's like an army, what were they called? MASH unit tents.
Yeah.
And she's going to put that up in her front yard because they have space. So that's a really creative idea. There's I've actually thought of, I drive by Home Depot and they have those utility sheds that look lovely with little, doors and windows and little things. And you can put 4 or 5 kids in those with a couple of shelves. If we're keeping, for early childhood, if we're keeping our ratio 1 to 6, 1 to 10, or sibling units, I think that we can be creative. Where I'm always thinking, Michael and I, in October it's going to get kind of cold for us. So, but our kids can live in snowsuits. I mean, they go out at 20 below. It's the teachers we have to care about. So, but people are becoming creative with their outdoor spaces. And one of the people who can help most with creative outdoor curriculum and outdoor spaces is Jeffrey Bishop. Jeffrey Bishop does Nature's Classrooms, and if you don't know about them, I encourage you to look them up. He starts all his children in Wisconsin outside, and most of their day is outside all year round. So that is another resource that we could actually access for outdoor classroom space.
Could be one of those changes that we make that we're really happy and that we keep, right? More outdoor time and more outdoor space. Michelle Yesbeck, hi, Michelle, thanks for being here today. She says she's in Chico, California, and she's planning to use tents to have more distancing, and she's max 15 in a classroom. So, this is different creative ways, which John had mentioned, and we all help each other by sharing what we're doing and what our questions are. We are just about to the end of our time. We do have a question about a source for child-size face shields. I know our friend Martha had some. Tanya, if you have something you could put in the...
I can.
You can let us know that. And let's see. Okay, Lisa Reiner, thanks for being here, Lisa. She says, it's a great time to get help. I'm generally quite independent gathering information and making decisions. Using the resources available has been incredibly impactful, especially to my stress level. The leadership cohort is a great place to sort through issues and get input. Well, thanks, Lisa. We appreciate that testimonial. Lisa's in the group that Tim and I lead on Tuesday afternoons, and we do have availability to start more groups, more cohorts. So if, I know Jonathan is one of the people who will be leading a cohort. So if you are interested in signing up for that, just let us know. The question here is Jeffrey who? That would be Jeffrey Bishop, B-I-S-H-O-P, with Nature's Classroom. Great resource. I'd like to just take a minute to wrap up and thank my panel for a really great discussion. Obviously, I think this format of having some questions from our participants is really helpful, and I hope that you all have found it helpful. It's good for us, rather than guessing on what you want to know, to give you the opportunity to really have a chance to talk to the panel and see what they have to say about these issues. And we could go on for hours and hours because there are so many questions. But as Lisa said, as Tim said, the opportunity to engage with other professionals and be led by a coach and a consultant who's working with many schools really does help share the resources and is very affordable at this time. So Tim, you want to tell people how to get in touch if they'd like to participate in something like that?
Absolutely. Basically, if you send an email to me, in fact, I just got an email from, I think, Tammy, if she's on the line, asking about whether we still had cohorts going, and I told her we just had an opening come up in ours if she wants to join us. But if you send either Kathy or me an email, you can also go to montessori.org under urgent news and announcements, and you'll see a blurb about this group, small group consulting cohorts, and you can go right there, and there's a particular page it takes you to that explains it. The cost is $350 a month. You can bring a second person from your school to join. We just ask that they attend regularly because it's very confidential and it's meant to be relationship building. But we really do a lot to meet the needs of our group, and they collectively set the agenda of what they want us to focus on, and then we'll typically have a conversation if needed outside of the group. I have to call Toby back after this. So, if you're interested, take a look at that. And Kathy or John, could you do a last little mention about what's beginning? I believe it's next week, the new series of professional development programs we're doing.
Go for it, John.
All right. Yeah, we're going to start a series of short hour-and-a-half webinars on very specific topics, delivered, specific to teachers, and they're getting ready to get going in this school year in many different forms of learning and instruction. We're going to be doing short webinars for school leaders, and they're going to be really economically priced because we understand everybody is really financially stressed, but these will be content specific webinars. They're going to be beginning next week. Andrew Cutt and I are doing one on teacher and leader self-care starting next week. I can't for the life of me remember the name of it. Michael Dorr will be involved in these. Many of our foundation consultants will be delivering. Tanya and I will be doing one on helping children move from their sort of spaced out at-home learning, ad hoc at-home learning, to really how do we help students at all levels from a teacher standpoint move back in and become normalized self-directed learners from toddler through adolescent. Tanya and I will be doing that shortly. So again, look for these webinar topics for teachers and leaders. They're going to be just 90 minutes, sometimes 2 sessions a week apart or within the week. And again, we're going to try to price them very economically because we understand the financial constraints that everybody's going through. So that's going to be
and we're also, this is sort of transforming. We have an online group on Facebook you may be aware of called Montessori Foundation Conversations. And that's what this is becoming, is the online version of that on webinar, because it really has become more of a panel. And so we're moving our serious professional development for Montessori teachers and Montessori leaders to either our courses, like Michael Dorr is about to launch on August 4th, his 8-week course, You Can Teach It All. And we're going to have these one-off or occasionally 2-session professional development sessions various times during the week that will be for either teachers or for school leaders. So we hope that you'll find them useful, and we're anxious to hear from you whether or not we're meeting a need that you find. So,
well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Thanks to the panel. And if you do have ideas of anything you'd like, any topics, please give us a email and we'd be happy to respond to that. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Same time, same place.
bye, everyone.
Okay, recording's off. I think that helps meet a need. I think that, you know, taking these questions, I'm really glad people participated. That was really great.
And
appreciate you guys.
I did get at least what they can Google to find the face shields. So we're not
Okay.
recommending one brand or another.
Got to even think about what I was saying as sounding like a endorsement, as if I know what medicine is.
It's okay.
No, I just wanted to
It's
clarify because
Thank
the
you.
specific question was, is Tim telling us not to do this and only to do that? No,
No,
Yeah.
and you didn't say that. No.
I just,
No,
I
it's okay.
thought it was so funny what Jen Darmagy showed yesterday of the kid taking the mask and
Yeah.
chewing and whatever. It was hysterical.
I'm
Well,
thinking
and-
they're going to use them for, you know, put their goldfish in, have their snacks. And,
Right. Well, and when the doctor said when they get wet, they're
Yeah.
useless, that
useless.
really was powerful to me too. That was kind of scary because
And they are going to get wet.
especially with the humidity and the running and playing and yeah.
Got to run to
All
another.
right.
See you
I'm gonna
guys.
Okay, everybody, have a great afternoon. Michael, great to see you.
Good to see you
Everybody,
all too.
You going to the secondary interview with Andreas?
No,
Okay. I
Nope,
figured I'd
me
just
either.
drop in and meet him.
Okay,
Yeah.
bye, guys.
you mean Andres and Deepak? You
Yes, sorry.
definitely should. You definitely should go. Okay,
That's where I'm heading.
great.
Bye.
Bye.